Hello, hello. Раз. Snow?
No.
No. Ah. Oh. Hello, people. So yes, let's have a little bit more technical topic. It's about tests. It's about unit tests. A couple thoughts about me. I am software developer, or as we say, software craftsman from Estonia, from company Codeborn in Ülemiste city. Probably you know. I like open source. I have several open source projects that I maintain. I love unit tests, test-driven development, extreme programming, clean code, and so on, and so on. And yeah, among other projects, I created Selenite, which is one widely used library for writing automated UI tests, or browser tests, or web tests. And one funny fact, that this is probably my first picture of from big conferences, which is literally saying, you build it, you test it. Sounds like very similar to the first speech, ironically. This is just someone took a picture from me, and later I found it in the internet. What we are talking about, tests. I love automated tests. I personally believe that all developers should write automated tests. In many aspects, it will make our world better. But there is many kinds of automated tests. My favorite one, probably, is UI test. You probably know testing pyramid. Who knows testing pyramid? Aha, great. Okay, we have several kinds of tests. Simplified, three kinds, simplified picture. UI tests, integration tests, and unit tests, like top, middle, lower, bottom level. They all have pros and cons. UI tests, I love them because they give you a confidence. If UI tests run and is green, it gives you quite a big confidence that actually application is working. Not 100%, but quite high confidence. But they are slow, and they are often flaky. This is a bigger problem, the biggest problem with UI tests. In the past, I talked a lot about flaky UI tests. This is one video from DEVCLUB, but there is much more. They are often flaky because they may fail because of web browser performance or glitches or bugs, because of JavaScript tricks, because of database, HTTP connection, microservices, zillion of different reasons why they can sometimes fail. Integration tests. This is one level lower. They still give some quite high confidence. They are much faster than UI tests, and they are not so flaky. And the bottom level is unit test. What is bad about unit tests is that they don't give you really a high confidence, because it totally may happen that all unit tests are green, but you are still not sure if your application is working. Because unit tests often mock dependencies, start mocked services, and so on and so on. Don't use database often, or run some mocked database. So you are not pretty much confident if the application works. But unit tests have a lot of pros. They are very fast. They are no flaky. This is the biggest bonus. They are no flaky. They are stable, because they just run Java methods in memory without any web browsers or services or database. That's why they are flaky. And this is a question. Is it really so? Is it really always so? Is it true that unit tests cannot be flaky? And yes, today we talk about this topic. Is it really so that they cannot be flaky? What usually happens when you come to a project, for example, that contains 100 of tests, and you try to check it out. You try to look into it and watch what's about tests in this project. You dive in, and how it ends up very quickly. Yes, very quickly you realize that 100 of tests randomly fail. you probably rerun it, and next time you will see another hundreds of tests failing. And when you try to rerun this test locally, reproduce the problem locally, usually you cannot. Usually locally, the same test is green. And you just don't know how to reproduce it. And then you don't know how to fix it. This is the biggest problem. And today I will show some of most typical causes of flaky unit tests from my experience. Cause one is often time. I will show one test currently, and the problem is that when I run this test locally, it's always green, but sometimes on Jenkins or in GitHub Actions, this test fails, and fails saying like exception that authentication token is expired. Let me show the test. This is a test, flaky out test. When I run it, it's green, as you see, no problems. When we look into it, we can see what exactly it does. It creates some authentication token. It puts into token, token consists of two parts. This is username, very simplified, colon, and timestamp. And the trick is that this service must check if this token is not expired yet. So if we look into production code is simple. It splits. Wrong shortcut. Okay, it splits the token to two parts. The second part is timestamp. It parses timestamp and checks that the age of this token is not bigger than this timeout. Timeout is something like, what is this, 8 minutes or something, 8 seconds? Doesn't matter. 8 minutes, okay, 8 minutes. So test is testing two cases, if token is okay or if token is expired. This testing is the token is okay, and to achieve that, test is generating token age, like using current timestamp, minus time to live. And to achieve the expired token, test creates current timestamp minus time to live minus 1 millisecond more. And then we will definitely get the expired token. And if you check, if you run this test, it's always green, no problems, yes. But if you run this test, sometimes on Jenkins it's failed. Now the question is how to reproduce it. Like I cannot fix this test because I cannot locally reproduce it. As we see, it's always green. Like what can I do? And there is, how to reproduce this test. There is always like a number of techniques how to reproduce the failing test. Like we actually know that sometimes this exception comes.
Can you run until it fails? There is, you can do it in one.
Yes, the theory was, can I run it until it fails? Yes, I can click.
Configure it.
Exactly. Yes. Yes. This is one good option. If we go into IntelliJ, edit configuration, and we can click here, modify option, repeat, add until failure. Yes, and this is a good way. Why didn't?
How to fix it?
When we can reproduce test, we already can fix it, or I can at least we can like make assumption what happened. And as you see, when we retried many times, then after like 100 times we could reproduce the test. Yes, actually sometimes it fails. We're lucky. There is, I can show some more techniques that you can try sometimes. Sometimes we have like theory that probably.
No, why it fails? That's a mystery.
Yeah, I will explain it. I will explain it. Yes, but just shortly saying that sometimes it helps to reproduce if you do some tricks in code. For example, you can put some pauses. Sometimes it can help. Or you sometimes can put pauses in code, in test. In this case, if we do pause 1 millisecond, we can stably reproduce test from the very first try. If you just make a small pause, the test always is failing. No, it's not sync issue. No.
Maybe current time is not stable, milliseconds.
Current time is not stable. Yes, current time is changing all the time. Yeah, as we are also. The trick with sleep is good, but only when you know where to put the sleep. Sometimes you are not sure where to sleep.
Put it everywhere.
Yeah, we don't always know where to sleep. Sometimes it's also possible to reproduce problem by running garbage collector randomly in some random places. Sometimes you can even run a separate thread which runs garbage collector all the time. Sometimes it helps, or there is some more tricks also. For example, one of my favorite tricks is to run application with profiler. Usually, profiler is used to find slow places in your code. But as a side effect, profiler slows down your code. So when you run it with profiler, you can repeat it more, reproduce the problem more often. Probably not in this case, but sometimes it helps. You can also try check with coverage, but it doesn't always help. So there are many tricks. One more good trick. If you try to reproduce it not in IntelliJ, like as we said, in IntelliJ you can reproduce it using this repeat until failure. But if you cannot use this because you are running in Gradle, in GitHub, in Jenkins, there is another good trick. Use this annotation. In JUnit there is annotation repeat test. It also allows you to to reproduce failing test often. As you see, it fails quite rarely. Yeah? Okay, we talked about how to reproduce a test. Yeah, when people don't think about these techniques, they often see it like this: like you are trying to reproduce, you are rerunning. You think that why cannot I reproduce a test? Like yesterday I did the same and it failed, but today I cannot reproduce it anymore. And usually, I should try this. Yes, now reproduced. This sounds like a mystery. You often don't know what to do and how to reproduce. So yeah, just next time when you try to do it, just try one of these. Either JUnit annotation or repeat in IntelliJ, or sleep somewhere, or run garbage collector, and so on and so on. Probably you also know some tricks. One good trick as well is putting a breakpoint to some field or method. Okay, advanced techniques. So the first typical cause of Flaky test is time. And let me explain why it actually fails. Very simplified, what we did in our code, we took current time millis. This is a function in Java that returns current time stamp, current time in milliseconds, starting from Unix era. And we also took the same current time stamp in one time in production code and one time in test. And in the end, we tried to understand if it's the same or it's different. In most cases, the test is green because they are the same. Because one very simple test runs faster than 1 millisecond. That's why in most cases it's green. And sometimes when you run garbage collector or you run profiler, sometimes Java gets slower and it runs longer than 1 millisecond. But it's even not exact description. The exact description of what there happens is like this one. Let's imagine time, how the time changes. This is the time in milliseconds. This is first millisecond, second millisecond, third millisecond. We need to go deeper. Let's show the same numbers in microseconds. This is like 0 microseconds. This is 1,000 of microseconds and 2,000 of microseconds. Now what happens? In most cases, the first line, which is called from test, like is called somewhere here in the beginning of millisecond. And the second current time millisecond is called from test somewhere here. And the point is that it happens in the same millisecond, during the same...
As I told, time is not stable.
No, time is stable. During 1 millisecond, and even, yeah, and usually between them, there is very small time, something like few microseconds. But the point is that first current time millis and the second current time millis give the same number in milliseconds. And that's why in most cases, these two numbers are equal and test is green. But sometimes, very rarely, it might happen, even if the test itself is very fast. Still, it might happen that the first timestamp we took like in the end of first millisecond, but the next timestamp we took in the beginning of next millisecond. And then, even if the test itself is very fast, is very few microseconds between them, still they belong to 2 different milliseconds.
And you cannot print that.
Yes. Yeah. You don't even know what happened. Yeah. And in this case, start and end are different numbers, even if they are very, very close, only like 2 microseconds between. This is what really happens sometimes to tests.
What to do?
Huh?
What to do?
What to do? Yeah, this is a good question, probably out of scope for today. One simple solution actually is like this. Just put in test like this.
Why
Or
would you not mock current time?
maybe 10, maybe 20, or what number is big enough. But yeah, if you put, for example, 10 milliseconds, the problem is that one day still can happen that your test runs slower than 10 milliseconds. It still may happen. You probably put 20, but again, this day comes sooner or later. So yeah, probably you can put something like that. Probably this is already good enough. I don't know, until you run the tests on Mac, Intel someday, or Windows, I don't know. So yeah, a better solution would be to mock current time. There are things in Java like allowing to mock date, like clock is the answer. Java has object clock that allows you to mock the date, to inject current time in data, in test. Okay, let's go to the next topic, static fields. Shared state. Well, probably let's get back to our code and find an advanced implementation of service. Let's check. We still have the same authentication service, but this time we want not to hard code time to live 8 minutes, but we want to make it configurable. It's like often happens in our projects. We want to make it configurable. And what often happens in some frameworks, in some projects, that we do hold configuration in some map or in some properties object. In this case, we have static final configuration. This basically is a map which loads initial configuration from the file. Like we have a configuration file in the project, like very many projects have, right? Like connection to database, timeouts, secrets, whatever. And we have a convenient map which loads all these properties, and it's very convenient to get any setting from this map, like typical, right? But and so what happens now? We still have test. A very similar test, but this time in the beginning we set some specific time to live. We don't want to wait for 8 minutes in test. We don't want to spend so much time. So in test we set some different setting, like 100 milliseconds only. And this time we try to make this test stable. We put here some smaller number. So this test this time like works stably. we have another test as well that checks that expired token fails. If it has 101 millisecond edge, then it always fails. So this test works stably. But what can happen when we have in this project multiple tests and we run them in parallel? Right? When we try to run in parallel all tests in the project, we see that, oops, again, some tests are failing. Again, token is expired. Still, flaky test. And when you run it single, it works. Oops. Often you are not sure how to reproduce it. In this case, in this project, we had another test that tried to test this new method, out token TTL. We had the test for this method. And this test, what it does, before each block, it sets token timeout to some number and is trying to assert that the token TTL is 10, like corresponds to this set value. So where is the problem?
They are competing, right?
Yes, they are competing. We are running in parallel two tests. One is setting this same property to 10, and another test is setting this same property to 100. And they do it all the same. They are changing the same property. So the root cause of this problem is basically static field. Static field, static mutable field. So different threads can change this field, and it causes multiple problems. This is just duplicate. What usually happens that one test is expecting that some method reading from this configuration is returning false, for example, and usually it's false, but someday you run test parallel and another test sets this setting to some different value. And the test is failing. So basically this is just a time bomb which is waiting until it happens someday. I'm describing it so that when we have only two tests, it was very easy to find out what was the problem. But when you have 2,000 of tests, they all run in parallel in different times, then probably this failure happens very rarely. And it's really hard often to find out what was the cause. Who was this class who is changing this property at the wrong moment? The question how to fix it. Avoid, mutable shared state, use dependency injection. All the needed configuration parameters should be passed in a constructor parameter using dependency injection, like Spring Framework, for example. We all know these good practices, but still this problem happens often in many projects. Similar pattern, in this case, this play configuration in our experience was a part of a framework, play framework. We already told it earlier about it, but often the same pattern happens in projects, in production projects, internet punks, shops, and so on. It often happens, but basically the same pattern. One test this is one real example from my experience. One test is checking if countries, who knows what country is this? Right, Bulgaria. If this is production code, like checking that if country is Bulgaria, then do something, call some external methods, some services, and this is not mocked. So when this code would fail because it's not mocked, but it's never called from test because current country is Estonia. But at some moment, there is running another test in parallel, which occasionally sets current country to Bulgaria. And if these tests are running in parallel, again, the first test is failing because it's not mocked. Some external services are not mocked from this test. I'm just telling that the root cause is the same, static mutable state, shared mutable state, but in reality, it often shows up in very corner situation, in very tricky bugs. Like in this case, this test actually was trying to call some real HTTP service, probably got some timeout in totally different place, and it was very hard to understand what actually happened. So yes, please avoid static fields. And if you want, I did a separate talk on DevClub about static fields. So yeah, you're welcome to watch. Next case, next cause, typical cause is, we need to check it out. The question is this test green or broken? This is very simplified again, what we call some string to uppercase, and we call some string to lowercase. Is it green or is it broken? Question. Yeah, seems that this is green. Yeah, at least part of the slide. Yeah, I asked the AI to draw a comics with two developers. The AI still thinks that developers are males. The AI exists, unfortunately.
Background female.
Oh, probably this is QA. Yeah. Sorry. And one developer is saying that, hey, look, this test is green. The same test that I showed. And another developer said that, no, this test is broken. I think this is broken. Why it happens that one developer sees a green test and another developer sees a broken test?
There is no USB-C to VGA cable. That's why the colors.
Yes, colors are different because of HDMI cables. Yes. Yeah, actually, there is two hints on the slide. I will try to run the same thing. Flaky case test. Again, the trick is that when I run this test, this is a test. When I run this test locally from my IDEA, it's green. It's okay. It works. But if I come and run it like from different computer, it starts failing. Sometimes it fails on different computer for different developer. And if we check what was the failure is not trivial at all. Seems like
No I.
The failure is quite tricky. Yes, we have a different character here. And the hint was this thing. This was a hint from AI. Like, yes, the point is that one developer, I asked to draw European developer with green tests, and I asked to draw a Turkish developer with broken test.
The problem is with Turkish language. It's not the test.
Yes, problem is Turkish language, not with test, yes, right? Actually, this was a real bug in Selenite library in my project. Once I got a bug reported because some other people running tests on their machines got wrong results. It was a hint, yes. So this third cause, typical cause, was using default locale or using system locale. This is just for information that in English locale or US locale, E converted to uppercase look like this, and E converted to lowercase looks like this, like typical. This is what we are used for. In Estonian locale, probably in most European locales. But if we check, for example, Turkish locales, then E is converted to some different E, and to lowercase, it's also converted to some different I. Yeah, Turkish is just a very convenient locale to reproduce this bug. Of course, there is much more different locales in the world, but I like Turkish because it's easy to reproduce. What to do? How to avoid this problem? So yeah, basically it was a bug because I wrote a library that didn't work in Turkish computers. Like basically, like oops. How to avoid this? I highly recommend, first of all, if you use IntelliJ IDEA or any other developer tool like Eclipse or whatever else, to go to settings and enable some inspections. First of all, this inspection. Call to string to uppercase without locale. There is many more useful inspections, but let's start from this one. And then IDEA will highlight these places, showing a warning. This warning exactly says that, hey, please don't use system locale, because you never know what is system locale. It might happen to be Turkish or Arabic or Japanese or whatever, or even Latvian or no. So proper way to do it in Java, when you call all these methods, to uppercase, to lowercase, to whatever else, some formats and so on, you always should set locale. If you know, you can use the right locale, like Estonian or whatever, English, American, or if you are not sure, or if this is some general word in Latin, then you always can use locale root. Locale root is some artificial locale, which is like more or less English. It's okay for all Latin letters, digits, and so on, like most common characters. When we are converting some technical like things like statuses, payment statuses, like active, inactive, and so on, disable it, enable it, for all these words, root works very well. This is a proper way to do it in Java. And the bigger question, how to prevent it in future?
But why it is not default behavior of Java?
Why it's not behavior in Java? Because
Default, using proof locale.
yes, good question. I don't know. Yeah. No.
Turkish question mark is semicolon. You can put it to the end of developer code and let the scratch their head why their code isn't working. What's the compiler issue?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, probably it's default in Java because like many years ago, Java initially was invented to run on desktop, was used to run desktop applications using Swing. And it was like reasonable for like in Turkish computer use Turkish locale and so on, probably. But nowadays in server it's totally nonsense, yes. So how to prevent it, how to avoid it in future? One good option is to enable all these inspections in IntelliJ, but we also would like to got exceptions, catch exceptions on Jenkins or on somewhere.
Use enums.
Use enums.
That is consistent with every CI that you currently have. So CI local environment uses the same locale. And the locale is not the same as your system setup, but the default that you set basically.
The problem is that often in Jenkins or GitHub Actions, locale is like English or American, I'm not sure, or something like that. And it often happens that in developers' machine, we also have English locale or American, US locale, often. So we often don't reproduce this problem. One good trick that I found out how to prevent this problem in future is I added, to many of my projects, I added these lines to Gradle script. So I'm always running tests with Turkish locale. And if someone occasionally uses default locale or system locale, it will be revealed soon. This is one good trick. It might seem strange that when you open like a project for Estonian whatever internet bank, and you see Turkish in built Gradle. it might sound strange, but yeah, it actually helps to reveal problems sooner. Next problem. I've tired already? No? Next, typical problems. Formatting. Few times I found out a failing test, Flaky test, which works mostly on most machines, but sometimes, rarely on some machines, it's failing with such an exception. Sounds strange, right? How? Spaces. Minus.
Double.
Overflow probably. Probably time is unstable. Yeah? Yeah, actually, yeah, you probably already spotted that this number is generated when default locale on computer is US or English, US actually is. And this format is generated when system locale is Estonian. And the difference is, you probably already spotted that this is a dash. I personally didn't know that there is several different minus signs. This is called dash. And this is what we actually are used for. And this is called, officially, this symbol is called real minus. It has its own Unicode symbol, and this is by default used in Estonian locale, if you didn't know. This case is again about system locale, but it is a little bit trickier. It's more trickier, because the question is why these symbols and these symbols are not Estonian. Because in Estonian locale we should have also different thousand separators and decimal separator. Why it's not so? So it took some time to find out. It was tricky, yes. In the end, I found out helper class for formatting numbers. And this basically look like this. In the beginning of this class, probably don't deep too much, just to highlight the root cause. In the beginning, it has such a block to initialize format, decimal format, somehow for system locale. So it did not just use system locale, it changed system locale. Changed details of system locale. Let's check it out. Yeah, we got system locale and called method init number format. This method init number format for system locale looks like this. You probably saw similar code like many times in many projects. This is very typical. If you ask AI to generate this code, it will always generate like very similar code. We use Java reflection to get internals of Java internal classes, like basically of the system locale. We use reflection again and again and again and again. And in the end, we get some cache of some symbols of formats, blah, blah, blah. And in the end, we are changing the default format for default system locale. Changing like this. We get like values. It's some internal implementation inside of Java somewhere. And we change the decimal separator to dot. In Estonian locale it was comma, now it's dot. And we changed 1,000 separators to unbreakable space and returned. So this was a magic reflection code that changed system locale. Obviously it was written to prevent the problem that somebody occasionally uses system locale. So it changed system locale. And the problem is, you already spot that this code, this was very smart code, but it was missing one important line, this line. Obviously, initially, when someone wrote this code, he tested only with positive numbers and forgot to check negative numbers as well. This code even had unit tests, but yes, only with positive numbers. Yes, so this was very tricky. And if you ask how to fix it, the idiomatic solution in Java is not to use reflection, not to use system locale, but actually there is very simple solution. It's a little bit long, but still it's correct solution in Java. You need to create an instance of decimal format symbols. You need to set explicitly all the properties that you need. Decimal separator, grouping separator, blah, blah, blah. And every time when you need to format something, you need to use this symbols object. You can put it to constant and use everywhere. This is a proper solution in Java. Questions?
How can you have salary with minus?
The question was how you can have salary with minus. You can if you use reflection in Java code and change system locale, then yes, everything is possible. I have 3 cases more. One more case, which is much more boring, unfortunately, but I need to say it out. Code reuse between tests. it often happens. Actually, it's probably the most popular reason of flaky tests. That tests are reusing helper methods of each other, or fields, or something like that. Let's imagine that we have one test. It's boring. Like, we have one test that has some data fields for where we put some test customer ID or something like that. And we have helper methods, which we can call from different test methods to generate some mocked customer, something like that. And of course, since this method is static, again, we want to reuse this from other tests. We have another test tool, which occasionally, which mocks some its own data, but also occasionally calls helper method from different tests. So one test is using static helper method from another test. Like it often happens, right? Yes, believe me. It's very easy to see oh, I already have helper method. You even start typing mock customer. IntelliJ suggests that, hey, you can use this mock customer. But the problem is that this mock customer method, helper method, actually changes, again, static field. It changes shared state. And if you run these two tests in parallel, again, you change the same static field, and you get failing test. And this is very boring, and this is the hardest test to fix. Because usually all these tests have a lot of helper methods, a lot of static fields. And you need to understand all the business logic. What is mocked, why is mocked, in which order. It often happens that these test methods use each other and change these fields in different order. So yeah, this is boring, but then this is hard to fix. So yeah, avoid static shared mutable state between tests. This is my recommendation. This is a funny case, but it also quite often happens. Caching, this is one of the biggest problem in programming, but in this case, the caching problem was even more complex. This is a very simplified example of some real project. We have cache builder. We need to create a cache, some cache, to cache currency rates, I guess. Yeah. So in this project, we have a class called cache builder. We call cache builder and saying that please create cache with name currency rates. And we mock loader. In real life, cache currency rates are loaded from database or external services or Amazon, whatever. But in this test, we want to mock it out. We mock the loader and say, just always use these hard-coded currency rates. And yeah, we assert that, for example, currency rate for euro is 10, very easy. But sometimes this test is failing and saying that currency rate of euro is not 10, but it's 11. Sometimes. And again, you cannot reproduce it. You cannot repeat this failure. Locally, it's always green. It turned out, after a while, I tried to find out, and it turned out that there was another test that also created cache, also called currency rates, but with different loader, with different currency rates. And the whole problem is that actually it would work. Actually, it's okay code. Every test creates its own cache, everything is fine. But the problem is that at some moment, someone decided to cache the result of this method. So when the first test called cache builder created a cache and cached it. And when another test called cache builder, it got the cached cache. Yes. Yes, they decided to cache the caches. Yes.
Is it some custom cache own written, publicly used?
Is it some custom cache or publicly used? This cache probably doesn't matter, actually. It can happen with any cache. But in this case, this cache was some public, like echo cache or mem cache, whatever, and this was some custom wrapper around it. Yes?
Why didn't the test fail then?
The problem is that when you run this test separately, it works. It gets 11 and asserts 11. And when you run this test separately, it works. It gets 10 and asserts 10.
But in CI you run both.
Yes, in CI you run both, but this cache that caches the caches, it has some expiration time. It expires after a few seconds or minutes, something like that. So when you run this, when you run all tests, on many thousands of tests, and probably you first run this one, then you first run first test, then 10,000 of other tests, cache is expired, and then you run the second test, it's always green. It's also green, yeah. So they fail only when these two tests are running close to each other among other million tests, yeah. It happens like rarely. It's very hard to reproduce it when you like intentionally want to reproduce it. So yeah, someone decided to cache the caches. It was funny, yeah. And probably the last case, which I believe happened in every single Java project in the world, happened at least once. Let me check host name. Basically, it can show up like in very different ways, but in the end, the root cause is this Java method in Java. This is standard Java API to resolve local host name. It just returns local host name. As we see in my machine, this is Andrei local. And as you see, it runs very quickly, like 5 milliseconds. 5 milliseconds. But sometimes it can run slower. That's a problem. For example, once it happened in project Little Proxy that I'm also maintaining. This Little Proxy project has a lot of tests that all try to start some mocked embedded proxy server in the beginning, and all these tests had configured timeout 5 seconds. And sometimes it happened that the whole test suite failed. In the end, I found out that the root cause was in this method that starts proxy server. It wants to start a proxy server on localhost on random port, random free port. And in the beginning, it tried to resolve the name of localhost, which in most cases is localhost or Andrei local, something like that. But the problem is that this method, especially on Mac OS, can work very slowly. Again, this is reported by AI that this method sometimes can trigger a reverse DNS lookup. It takes the IP of this computer and sends to network and asks DNS provider or whatever to resolve the host name. It sends IP of local machine. DNS provider says that, sorry, I don't know this IP, this is some unknown IP, and this takes some time. In most cases, in most systems, the default timeout is 5 seconds for DNS lookup, ironically. So it's ironically happened that when this happens, then all these tests which had timeout 5 seconds, all these tests failed. If they had timeout 6 seconds, they would work, but slowly. And this is a tricky bug for me because I don't know how to reproduce it. As you see, when I run the same code locally, it works. It works. I tried different Java machines, Java versions, and so on. It works quickly always. I asked AI how to reproduce it, and AI gave me some recommendations. I need to run sudo, change one network setting, another network setting, third network setting, disable some services in macOS. And probably it's not recommended to do it during public presentation.
It's MDNS, right?
Yes, MDNS, something like that. Yes. Yeah, so I didn't want to reproduce it today. Sorry, it seemed to be too risky. But this is good to know because it's a very typical problem in Java projects. I just took some screenshots. Selenium project had this issue. It was reported that Selenium tests sometimes are very, very slow. Little Proxy project had this issue. Locale-based project had this issue. It's ironical that Locale-based actually doesn't need any network access, doesn't need to know localhost name, but Locale-based has a feature that when it inserts some change set into database, it is writing from which computer this change set was executed. To achieve that, it resolves localhost name, which hands up sometimes. So sometimes Locale-based is very, very slow, up to 30 seconds sometimes. And now you know why. Probably it's already fixed, yes, currently, but yeah, some years ago. And even in a Netty project, which is like #1 for networking in Java, they also had this issue some years ago. This is just an illustration that this is a common problem. And also this illustration illustrates one more thing, that sometimes when you have failing tests, like this one, we had failing tests, we could rerun them and get green tests. Everything is working. But this illustration shows that usually it's not a good idea just to rerun tests and ignore it. Because often flaky tests show actually a production bug. Very often flaky tests help to reveal some production issues sooner. So I highly recommend you not to ignore, but investigate flaky tests, rerun. Now you can rerun, now you can debug them. It's very useful. So takeaways for today. Avoid static variables. Check my talk anti-static. Avoid dependent tests that use each other or depends on each other. Yeah, reset state in the beginning of every test. And avoid black magic. Avoid reflection and all this stuff. The wisdom says that if you feel the need for magic, you're doing something wrong. Keep it simple. Create simple solution. Yes? Question?
Yes. Will AI resolve all of that? Right? Engineers write less and less code, and you can ask AI to resolve it. You don't need to bother. No?
I don't believe. Sometimes AI can help, of course, but not always. Sometimes these projects are just too big. It's impossible to analyze all this.
You dive very deep into these specific cases. I wonder what is like more systematic approach in the project where you have 5,000 tests and you have hundreds of them flaky. How do you approach prioritizing them or deciding which ones you will fix and then spending too much time on the specific tests and wondering like, is it worth it?
Okay, you are asking about process, not like technical details. It depends on project, on customer and so on. But my default answer is that when we are talking about unit tests, let's fix them immediately. Like sometimes we can delete some tests, yeah, or rewrite them from the scratch. Sometimes it's also possible, but probably not a good idea. Yeah? So when we're talking about unit tests, fix immediately by default. Probably there are some different situations, but yeah. When we are talking about UI tests, it's much more complex. They are slow, they take time to fix and so on. But unit tests, like at least now I can repeat them and run them and find out the problem. Yes?
Thank you, Andrei. And I have a aggregate question about problems which we presented. How do you think, is it a result of quality of test design? Because as I know, unit tests usually mean environment agnostic, so viewer logic testing, or it inevitable trade-off that you cannot avoid full isolation.
Yeah, exactly. That's the point, that your unit test is intended to be environment agnostic. It should not depend on database, web services, and so on, network. But yes, inevitable. Some things still happen. For example, time is unstable. first of all. Some things are inevitable, or sometimes you can get cheaper CPU, slower CPU, or whatever else. So yes, it's inevitable. That's the whole point, yes.
Some more additional. About timer. As I know, in JavaScript, it's easy to make fake timings, for example, with just what about Java?
In Java, it's possible to fake time. It's not so short as in JavaScript, but still possible. You need to use clock object. Just not all developers know it and use it. This is a problem that when you do it from the very beginning, this is why TDD is important, test-driven development. When you write test from the very beginning and you know this problem and you use clock from the very beginning, it's easy. But when you already have a project with millions of usages of current time without clock, then it's already hard to fix. Yeah. Yes, question?
Thank you so much, Andrei. I ask you one question as a product manager. In perspective of TDD, how we can ensure that unit tests are just solving a real behavior of our users and not just something technical implementation details?
Yes, this is a good question. How can you be sure that unit tests are testing some real business need, not just technical? And the short answer is that you cannot. And it always happens that developers write tests that are quite useless, that mock everything, assert the same things that they have mocked. The unit tests often are useless. Yeah, yeah, because often developers cannot do it correctly. My only recommendation is use test-driven development. When you write test first, then you think, what is the expected behavior? What is the expected result? But it often happens that developer first writes the code itself, and only then start writing tests. And in this case, test reflects the code. Test, no, they don't think anymore on the expected result. BDD.
Actually, also one of recommendations for AI use, we say like engineer real human rights test, and that AI implemented. So
yes, this is also possible that human rights tests and AI implements. Sometimes people do the otherwise. They ask your AI to write tests, and they implement the code itself. So different options are possible.
Sometimes people write code and ask AI to write tests.
Yes, it happens also. But yeah, first of all, yeah, first think, then write. This is like main principle. But unfortunately, I guess you cannot control it, really. Yeah.
Quick question: how many tests are too many?
How many tests is too many? I don't know. It depends on the project.
what is a good code coverage? Let's put it this way.
Again, it depends. Often it's not like ideally 100%, but why it's not good idea to write 100%, because at least in Java there is a lot of code, sugar, boilerplate, and so on, which is not reasonable to cover these tests. If we calculate that how much code in Java is boilerplate, probably 30%, probably, I guess. Maybe all this try catch and all this shit. Then probably 70% is good coverage for all the reasonable code. All the reasonable code should be covered by tests. This is the answer. Boilerplate doesn't need.
My question again about processes, I suppose. So you mentioned these specific cases. I wonder how can we extrapolate it so that you could like enforce it on teams to always write safe tests, or like not flaky. For example, if you want to enforce that unit tests do not depend on the network, can you cage it in the like Docker container and turn off the internet? Or do something similar with Locale, like do the isolation so that you're sure they're always not flaky, and extrapolate it on other tests, I don't know, for integration tests or UI or whatever. what would be your approach there?
Yeah, this is interesting topic, how to be sure that tests are isolated, don't depend on network and so on. Yes, if you want, you can do all this stuff. You can run tests in isolated container without network, without browsers. You can, for example, run tests so that each test is running in a separate JVM, for example, in separate process. It will take more time, but you can do it only at night, for example. Yes, we did such experiments that every night we run the whole test suite so that every test in a separate process. It took like few hours, but yeah, all tests were isolated. It's possible if you want, but I almost haven't seen any project that actually care so much. Usually not.
Okay, do we have any more questions from the people? Maybe not. So let's clap.
Yes. Thank you.